Hi there guys, so today I'm bringing you another speed paint, but this time I actually captured my whole process. So this time around my prompt was bear archer, so to start out I found some nice reference pictures of some Asiatic black bears, because those were the bears I thought looked the most interesting and because they have these really thick manes and expressive faces. To start out with, I'm just sketching out lots of bears on this one big canvas until I feel like I've got a pretty good idea of what's going on in their anatomy. If you can find skeletal reference like you see me do later on, it's really helpful to figure out how the animals work, especially if they're an animal that you don't see very much in person. Research is the most important step in concept art and character design, so I do a lot of sketching. I'm personally not a huge fan of doing digital sketching because I don't have a Cintiq, but I'm much more big fan of the tactile sort of feeling that I get when I draw on paper. I thought I would do it digitally so I can show my process anyway, and I think hopefully I might be able to show my actual sketching process the next time. The sketches are pretty loose because I'm just trying to get a feeling for the general shape and locomotion of the bear. I went ahead and I threw some shading onto my sketches in a very loose sense so that I could glance at them and kind of get a feeling of how lights fell on the body and to help fill out their form. Then I move on to my rough, more thumbnail-like sketches for my final now that I've loosened up. I think I probably should have done a few more sketches, but I did the second one and I found I really liked the expression that the pose gave, and I decided against personifying the bear any more than I really felt I needed to. That way it would give it a more unique look than standing on 2 feet, because you see a lot of bear characters that do that. Then I took my rough sketch into a new canvas and I did a larger version of the sketch to make sure that the proportions looked alright. You'll notice me zooming out a lot, and that's because the farther you are away from your piece, the easier it is to spot large anatomy mistakes that can really impact the piece. And that's especially true in digital art. It's a good practice to train yourself to zoom out and check your work regularly so you don't get too attached to any one single part of an image. This is a sketch though, so this would be the time to play around with proportions and see if there's anything you want to bring it to life. So I would say it's okay to play with proportions, but if there's certain mistakes that you notice that you don't care for when you're zoomed out, definitely would be the time to correct them, because it's going to be easier now than it will be later. You'll notice that I gave the final line art a bit more of a lumpy nose and a jutted out lower lip to bring in some character. Finally, once I've got a sketch I'm happy with, I'll start to line. I've decided to base the archer bear off of historical Japanese archers because there's a lot of characters who are archers that kind of wind up falling into that sort of Robin Hood vibe. And I thought this would be pretty unique and give me a way to play with it a little bit more. Once I got the line art to a point where I'm happy, I just add in some colors, using some complementary colors in the shadows to give depth, and adding a pattern to the outfit to give a more interesting look. The last step I do is to paint in the concept background of the stones to make it look like he's perched at a vantage point to do some finishing touches. I will say I'm not entirely satisfied with the final piece, but I also think that artists tend to be their own biggest critics. I think if I have some free time at some point, I might come back to this piece and do some touching up, but if nothing else, it taught me more that I can use moving forward. I always think that it's best as an artist to not be too hard if you've had a bad day or two, because ultimately any art you make, no matter how much you dislike it, is practice towards making you better moving forward. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me today, and I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know your feedback, and I'll see you guys next time.